welcome to the Haunted Library. Gather around, gals and ghouls. Today I'll be reading Heed the Mother, a story about what it takes to win back God's favor. Book, come now, come. Heed the Mother. The outside world was unknown to her, but she could see a glimpse of it through the window in his room. Trees sprouted up from the cracks in the pavement, and the tall building surrounding their apartment was bursting with branches and lush green vines. A family of deer was gazing on the hill, paused, and peered into the dirty window. Grabbing her arm, he pulled her away from the window. Pulling the shades tight, the threadbare curtains admitted streams of light across the cracked tile floor. "You must stay away from the window, Marlowe. How many times do I have to tell you?" Pulling the woman into his chest, hugging her tight. "We mustn't be seen. You know what will happen. If Gaia sees you," Owen said, panting, stroking down her brown hair. "I know, Owen, but it looks so beautiful outside. Maybe she isn't mad anymore. It could be safe now. We aren't supposed to live trapped in a house. We're supposed to be outside." Clenching her fist in his shirt, she pushed back from his embrace. "I want to go outside. I want to feel the grass. I want to feel the water run around my feet, just like in the stories I've read." "You know that's impossible. We've lost too many people to the fool's errand. Man isn't safe outside, at least not yet. We have the reciprocity coming up. This time will be different," he said, stroking a thumb down her face. His vision blurred as tears spilled over his blonde lashes. "I don't want to go to the reciprocity. We'll be fine here," Marlowe said. "I know, but we must do our part too. We must go help your mother in the garden before we get into trouble," he said, brushing a hand through his sandy blonde hair. He retreated from sight, not daring a second glance out the window for fear the cleaners would be there. Marlowe followed Owen. The garden was a pitiful sight. Pots filled the room. The green beans grew on teepees, corn grew almost to the ceiling, and strawberry pots hung on the walls. Her mother was squatted down by a terracotta pot, carefully inspecting the green beans and plucking them off one by one. "Fancy the two of you joining me," she said, keeping her gaze on the beans. "We must prepare for the reciprocity in 2 days. There is no time to dilly-dally around. And Owen, finish transplanting those sprouts. I'm hoping to trade for carrots or potatoes. It's been so long since we had those growing here." Leilani stood, the pouch in her apron filled with vegetables. "Help me wash these, will you?" Patting Marlowe on her arm, she headed down the hallway to the kitchen. "It's okay, Mar. We still have 2 days left. Who knows? We might luck out on this round," he said. "Yeah, sure. 2 days. Marlowe, I need your help in here," she hollered, her voice bursting through the silence, causing them to jump. "Coming," she murmured, making her way down the hall as if she wore concrete boots. Biting her lip, she rounded the corner. "Mama, do we have to go to the reciprocity? Can't we just stay here? We have it good here, don't we?" "Hush yourself, child," Leilani said through clenched teeth. "You know good and well why we must go. We might as well throw Owen to the cleaners ourselves. Do you want to starve? Disrespecting our other mater families will be the last thing we did." "I know, Mama. I was just hoping. That is all." Picking up the green beans, she washed the dirt off robotically, cleaning each one. "I warned you not to make friends with Owen. Honey, it wasn't because I don't care. I had an Owen when I was your age. His name was Reuben. I was head over heels. He was my best friend, but I couldn't stop the drawing either," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. She swiped all the vegetables into the pot, hanging it over a small fire. Marlowe sighed, placing 6 crudely carved wooden plates around the table. "Yes, Mama, I understand. I'm grateful for the reciprocity, really," she said in a hushed whisper. "I'm proud to do my part too. Just imagine, after we pay our pittance and we can feel the sun on our faces and the purr of a kitten around our legs," Owen said, flopping into an open seat, his hazel eyes locked on Marlowe's big doe eyes. "Think of our child, playing in the river, catching frogs." Running her hand over her pregnant belly, her head whipped to the door as 2 women came shuffling into the door. Glancing from Owen to Marlowe, a smack broke through the tension. Bronson ran into the back of his mother. Watch where you're going, child, Rhea said, waggling a scolding finger at him. At 19, she had to crane up to look at her son, making the exchange look almost comical. Come now, let's eat, Leilani said, heckling them in and waving around. Pouring the contents of the pot into the serving dish, the meager amount of beans and corn wouldn't be filling any bellies tonight. Pushing his ration of beans onto Marlowe's plate, Owen picked up his corn, smiling softly. I never cared much for beans. I'm more of a carrot guy. The light streaming through the curtain began its retreat as darkness chased it out of the room. Running a dry rag over the plates, Leilani stacked them in the corner. Putting her hands on her hips, she pulled up tall as she addressed the room. Okay, everybody, off to bed. With you, we leave at dawn. It's a long walk to the house. Prepare your provisions tonight. Any trades you might have? Yes, ma'am, they said in unison, shuffling out of the room, the unspoken goodbye hanging around their heads in a threatening cloud. Laying down on the makeshift pallet of leaves, the threadbare blanket on top didn't stop the leaves from poking through. Marlowe laid her head on his arms, stroking her stomach as he hummed to the baby. I can't wait to meet you. I really hope you're a girl, he whispered into the dark. I really think we should talk about this, just in case. You know, what's there to talk about? Well, for one, what should we name the baby? Pushing up on her side, she stared into the darkness. The dense blackness obstructed his face. Can't we talk about that when we get home? Silence hung heavy in the air. We've been lucky the past 5 years. What are the odds he will make it through the 6th? There are fewer and fewer men every time. Geez, Mar, I'm not dead yet. Oh, God, I didn't mean it like that, and you know it. Don't worry, I have a plan. Just in case I do get picked in the drawing, I'll meet you guys back here, and then we can pick the baby's name. Besides, it's bad luck to name it before it's born. You know that, he said, gently pulling her back down into the mat. Laying silently in the dark, Owen's breath evened out. The soft snores filled the air. It must be so easy to be so sure, Marlowe said into the void. I really want to name you Merritt. I think it would work for both girl or boy, she said, rubbing her baby bump. She sighed. But I do agree with your father. It would be for the best if you were a girl. Closing her eyes, she drifted into a deep slumber. She awoke to a gentle tapping on her forehead. He ran his finger down the bridge of her nose. Mar, it's almost time. Wake up, sweetie. Groaning, she rolled over, snuggling her face into his chest. Not yet, she said, grumbling. Baby is still tired. I mean, if you want your mother to come in and wake you up, that's a great idea, he said, laughing. The deep tone reverberated through his chest, the happy melody echoing off the walls. Fine. No need for threats this early, she said, sitting up, stretching to the ceiling and yawning. She wiped the sleep from her eyes. Using the wall, she felt her way down the hallway to the living room. Faint whispers seemed impossibly loud in the early morning darkness. Marlowe and Owen are here now. That's all of us, Charlotte said, tying the rope around their waists. Geez, Marlowe, if you get any bigger, you're going to have to sit the next one out. Laughing, she tied the end to her waist. Be nice, Cher, Leilani said. It's pitch black in the tunnel, so make sure you take care walking down the stairs, and be mindful of the person in front of you. Panic will only cause injuries, or worse, unhooking the line. The procession started down the steps. The heavy cobwebs broke away as they passed through the tunnel. I really hate spiders, Rhea said, flipping her hand every which way to remove the webbing. Shh, we don't want them to hear us, Charlotte said. Muffled sobs greeted her words, and Rhea pushed in through the silence. How much time had passed while they were in the tunnel? They couldn't be sure. The darkness that surrounded them gave no sign of breaking. A chorus of groaning bellies accompanied the sound of them marching. Tugging on the lead in front of him, Owen felt in the darkness, fingertips grazing her arm. He handed off a small pouch. Fumbling to get the pouch open, her finger brushed the leafy caps of strawberries. Popping one into her mouth, Marlowe chewed as silently as possible, squishing it to the roof. The slope of the tunnel began to rise, ushering the group back toward the land above. Wooden stairs creaked underfoot. A sliver of light escaped around the crudely constructed door. Knocking 3 times, they waited for an answer. Who presents themselves upon our step? A female voice called through the door. It's Leilani of the New Haven House. We have trade and 1 entry into the lottery. The door swung open, revealing a short, round older woman. Smiling, she opened her arms in greeting. Welcome to our house. Leilani leaned in for a brief hug before ushering everyone through the door. Untying them one by one, she stuffed the rope into her sack. Just the one, Leilani? Where's Bronson? He's missing a very important dinner, Kamara said, squinting her eyes, which made her face curl up like a raisin. Bronson is tending to the garden while we are away. He still has another year before he enters the lottery, Leilani said, returning the glare with daggers of her own. Ah, yes, of course. Please make yourself at home. The drawing will be held a little later in the evening. The plastic smile returned to her face before she scampered off. Owen, please put the seedlings next to the mater altar. And she walked away before the last words left her lips. Marlowe followed Owen on his heels into the altar room. The giant red bowl in the middle of the room sat like a great stone giant. The air was thick with its ominous presence, and the squares of paper already littering the bottom of the bowl. Humming a sad song, he took the pots out of his vendor tray and placed them around the altar. The stone statue featured a woman peeking out from behind the tree, a red apple in her hand, a stark contrast to the pale stone. Owen, I'm really scared. What if they pick you? I can't. A sob choked off her words. There's no reason to cry, Mar. If they pick me, I'll be honored. Looking side-eye, he saw a rat hiding in the corner. The dim light reflected off Kamara's gray hair. Think of the opportunity this could give our child. Pulling her into a tight hug, he whispered roughly into her ear, I have a plan. I'll tell you later. Just not here. She's listening. Marlowe straightened up. Of course. How silly of me. It must be the baby making my mind crazy, she said. Laughing softly, she wiped her eyes. The smell of burning sage invaded her senses. Her breath began to quicken, pulse pounding like a drum in her ear. It's time. The room filled one by one with women clinging tightly to their sons, standing as far away from possible of the big red bowl as the distance would grant them safely. A tall, stern woman approached the podium behind the altar, wearing a golden cloak. Raising her hands above her head, the room fell into dead silence. Welcome to the Orchard House. I am so happy all of you came into my home to share into the autumn solstice with us. Even though the mother turned a blind eye, we have been blessed with a bountiful harvest this year. To decide who gets picked the first trade, we will draw for the offering. Kamara, if you please, Dinah said, gesturing to the wooden hand crank in the base of the altar table. Kamara waddled over to the crank. Wiping her hands down her skirt, she grabbed the crank with both hands and gave it a hard turn. Scraps of paper in the bottom began to toss around like popcorn. Cranking the handle faster, the paper climbed to the top of the bowl. One hand crank later, a square of paper shot out of the bowl. Dinah snatched the paper mid-air, bringing it to her chest. We have the price of the reciprocity. The blood will pay for our transgressions against the mother. May Gaia shine her loving light back on us and bless us with the gift of walking in the sun amongst her other children. As they held a collective breath, the intense silence made Marlowe's ears ring. Clutching onto Owen, she settled into her own hell, awaiting the name. Opening the paper, Dinah's head shot up, looking right into Owen's eyes, her gray eyes cold and empty. Owen of New Haven. Folding the paper in half, she handed it down to Kamara. The New Haven house will celebrate with the last feast and the first pick of the trades. A silent tear raced down Marlowe's face, color draining as they fell. Squeezing her daughter's arm, Leilani stepped. Steeling her spine, she squared her jaw, standing tall. We will trade green beans and corn for potatoes and carrots, she said, stepping back into the huddle. She squeezed her arm once more, tears spilling over her cheeks. Kamara stepped forward, holding the slip of paper over the open flame. Glancing down at the folded square, in neat penmanship, it read, Chiron of Orchard House. Dropping the paper into the brass bowl, she watched it burn to ashes. The families ran out of the room. In a fraction of a second, the New Haven family was left alone in the grand room. Their sobs created a heart-wrenching melody, and the pain of their voices pushed the ominous air from the room. Come, children. We have a lot to say in a few short hours, she said. leading the family down the ornate hallway. The black door at the end of the hall depicted a golden goddess with the moon held high above her head. Pausing briefly with her hand on the cold knob, she gave it a gentle twist and pushed the door open. The round banquet table was covered with fruits and vegetables of all kinds. Some of them she had never seen before. Gasps of awe echoed around her as they came into the room. They had never seen so much food. A serving platter was piled high with bread and various spreads, filled small bowls surrounding it. Marlowe sat her hands in her lap, staring at the plate of food in front of her. Owen gently brought a bunch of grapes to her ashen lips. You need to eat. Think of our baby. Leaning forward, he nestled in her ear. I told you, I have a plan. I'll tell you about it tomorrow, he said in hushed tones. Sitting up straight, she looked at him, hope hanging on every word. Okay, I will. I'll eat. That's the spirit, Mar. We still have our goodbyes before the ritual bath, okay? Don't be sad yet. Save that for tomorrow night. But the ritual's tomorrow morning. Waiting until tomorrow night seems too late. By then, you'll be gone from us. We'll talk later. You need to eat up, both of you, he said, rubbing her swollen belly. The minutes ticked by like seconds. A sharp knock sounded on the door, exploding like thunder. Gasping, wide-eyed, they stared at the door. Slowly, it swung open, revealing Dinah's tall frame draped in a black robe. This time, she looked pale and ghastly. It is time for final goodbyes, Dinah said solemnly, bowing as she exited the room. Let's leave them to say goodbye, Leilani said, pushing back from the table. Grabbing onto the back of Owen's head, she held their foreheads together, fresh tears dripping off of her cheeks, sliding down his jawline. It was an honor and a privilege to know you. I pray we shall meet again in the Everforest. You were like a son to me. I will help Marlowe watch over your baby. I swear it. Murmurs of goodbye followed, as each one patted him on the back. The room was empty save for the two of them. Pushing the chair back from the table, he pulled Marlowe into his lap. Petting her hair from her tear-stained face, he whispered into her crown, They will take me to the bath soon. After that, I will be escorted to the sacrament chambers until the morning. I'm sure the harvest pyre is all ready for me to bleed on. Sobs wrecked her chest. Is this the pep talk you had in mind for after dinner? Leaning over, she lurched, spilling the contents of her dinner onto the floor. Baby, he said, wiping her mouth. I'm getting to that part. Now, the doors will for sure be locked, so I can't go back the way we came. However, I'm willing to bet the windows will be open. Marlowe inhaled a sharp breath. Do you mean walk outside? All the way back to New Haven? If the animals don't eat you, they will surely alert the cleaners. If I stay here, I'll be put on a platter to wait for death. If I try to run home, there's a chance I could make it alone. Slipping silently through the dawn, I know no one will come after me, and they will expect me to be dead. We just need to pray they let your mother keep those trades, or she might kill me herself. Straightening her shoulders, she wiped her eyes. I love you, Owen. I will tell our child all about your sacrifice to the cause. The baby would be so proud. Leaning in for a kiss, she got up and slowly walked out of the feast hall. The ritual bath was nothing like he had expected. He had never had a proper bath, much less a hot one. The oils they poured in had a floral scent. It smelled of heaven, even if it led to hell. The elders washed and scrubbed every part of him, presenting him with the nicest set of clothes he had ever seen. There were no holes, threadbare spots, or even a tear to be seen. The irony of getting the best gifts of his life on the last night was not lost on him. He was being beckoned to the sacrament chamber. He passed the altar room. Excuse me, ma'am? Is there any way I could have the seedlings of the carrots and potatoes in the room with me tonight? I just want to pray over them. I pray they grow the best bounty for New Haven, Owen said, bowing slightly. Well, that's fine, young man, but those are the only plants they get, so if you destroy them... I understand, he said, picking out the healthiest-looking plants. He carried the pots back to the room with him. Closing the door behind him, he heard the latch click. Sinking down into the bed, he crossed his legs. Well, plants, you have to come with me. They might not let her keep them after I leave. Sinking into the soft bed, he fought sleep. But it was too dangerous to sleep. He might not wake up in time to leave. Okay, plants. Let's see if my plan is futile. Bargaining on the window sounded so good when I was looking at her, but now it's a crapshoot. Putting the plants down on the floor in front of the window, he braced his hands on the glass. Gently pushing up, the glass didn't budge. God damn it, he screamed, kicking the wall. When one window is closed, knock the fucking glass out, he said. Balling a pillowcase around his fist, he cradled the plants in his other arms. They won't follow me, even if they hear me. Punching as hard as he could, the window shattered. Knocking out the rest of the glass, he hopped out the window. The glass crunched under his sneakers as he hit the ground. The doors burst open as he ran to the front of the house. The sky was painted like fire as the reds and oranges burned brightly across the sky. Owen's gone! He's ran out the window! Help! We need to catch him! The guard shrieked into the empty hallway. Footsteps pounded down the wooden hallway. Gone? Where would he go? It's not safe outside. He's doomed us all. The sacrifice must be today, Dahlia boomed. A scream tore up the hallway. Marlowe had her face pressed into the bay window. Owen paused when he heard her cry. Pointing her finger to his left, her screams grew in volume. Frantically, she tugs at the door. Vines ran across the ground, snaking up his legs, binding his torso, cinching his arms down. The clay pots cracked into pieces beneath the force of the vines. Blood trickles down his arms. He stood frozen in place, eyes glued to the heap of vines shambling towards him. Another vine shot out from the shamble. It had finger-like fibers growing from it. The vine wrapped around his head, shoving the orange growths into his eyes and mouth. The heap of vines retreated into the surrounding bushes. Owen's screams filled the foyer as he crawled around on all fours, swatting in front of his face. Marlowe forced the door open, running out into the early dawn. Come back, Marlowe! He's been infected! He's turning into one of them! We can't save the cleaners! You know that! Dahlia shouted from the porch. Falling onto her knees, she grasped at the orange fungus, trying to pull it off his face. You can't die here. You promised it would be okay. We haven't gotten the chance to talk yet. Mar, you have to go back. Please, Marlowe, go back inside, he said, contorting, screaming, grasping his stomach as he rolled to his side. Please leave me. I'm sorry. I am so sorry. I thought I could make it. I'm not leaving you here alone. I'll go with you. Let's go home, Owen, she said, a wail of agony ripped from her chest. Pulling on his arm, she tried to move him back inside. Try as she may, Owen didn't move. Defeated, she fell to her knees. Owen stilled. His screams died down. The brisk rise and fall of his chest halted. Owen, you have to get up. We never named the baby. Please get up. Sobs wrecked her body. Gasping for air as she beat her fist on his back, Marlowe collapsed over his motionless frame. Owen jerked under her weight. Going limp, he groaned. Jerking again, Marlowe raised her head to look at him. Standing up with his back to her, he jerked once more. He turned to look at her. His hazel eyes were now covered in a gray film. Jerking his head to the side, he took a shaky step toward her. Scrambling backward, she collided with the tree. Owen, are you in there? It's me, Marlowe. Come back to me, she pleaded. Vines weaved out of his chest, floating in the air. He took another shaky step toward her. Owen, stop. Don't come any closer, she said. Pushing up to her feet, she pressed her back to the tree. Dozens of horrified faces filled the window, frozen in place as they watched helplessly. Marlowe inched around the tree. Countless people shambled from the woods, their gray eyes glued brightly to the early morning sun. Plants sprouting from their bodies, orange finger-like growths decorated the tops of their heads. Walking toward the manor unmasked, vines lashing out around them. Vines shot out of his torso, stabbing her in the shoulder. She was pushed back into the tree. Frantically pulling at the vine, her fingers slipped through the blood. Owen, let her go, Leilani screamed from the doorway. Several other women held her back. Pulling at the doorframe, she struggled to break free. Vines shot out from his palms as they punched through her chest, dragging her towards him. Blood leaking around the vines, Marlowe threw her arms around, holding him tightly in a hug. It's okay, baby. I'm right here. Let's go home. We can still be together, just like we planned, remember? She said, crying into his shoulder. Opening his mouth, he coughed some orange slime onto her face. Marlowe's hand shot up, holding her head. She began to scream. The slime slithered into her mouth, her eyes, falling limp as her body hung on the vines. The vines retreated, dropping her body onto the ground. A cloud of dust blossomed around them as she fell in a crumpled heap. Convulsing on the ground with a final spasm, she fell still. Quivering, she climbed to her feet. Cocking her head sideways, she looked over at the manor. A chorus of screams rang out from the manor as the onlookers retreated from the windows. The 12 great families were reduced to roaches scattering around the foyer. Cleaners! Kamara screamed. We have to go to the tunnels. No, calm down. Don't panic. Maybe they'll leave. If we leave Orchard Manor, we lose everything we've worked so hard to preserve. Shut the fuck up, Dinah. This is all your fault. You lied. I saw the paper. The goddess is punishing us because you lied. It said, Chiron, confess. Tell them how you brought the wrath down upon us. Kamara said, backing Dinah into the corner. We should throw them out. Make it right. What? Why would I lie? It said Owen. Really? She said, her voice shaking with panic. I'll prove it to you. Dinah is lying, she said, running into the altar room, holding up scraps of paper. Unfolding them one at a time, she threw them into the floor. Owen of New Haven. Tears fell down Dinah's face. I couldn't let them take you. I wasn't ready. No one was supposed to know. A fish smashed into her face, sending Dinah crashing into the ground. So you take my babies? How could you? I vote we throw them out, both of them. We need to appease the goddess. Chiron didn't know, I swear. It was all me. Please have mercy on my son. No, he was the rightful sacrifice. We can't keep him. It's too dangerous. Vine shot into the house, wrapping around Dinah and Chiron, and Chimera pulling them into the porch, screaming. They tried to cling to the doorframe, but the wood splintered in their hands as they were ripped away. Coming out of the surrounding trees, hundreds of people walked out of the woods, covered in various stages of plant growth as they walked on shaky legs to the house, vines snaking out of their skin, wrapping around various parts of the captives. They were slowly ripped apart with a hard pull, their screams echoing into the distance. Blood sprayed all over the lawn. Arms, legs, heads dropped into the morning dew-covered grass. Marlowe dropped on her hands and knees. A beastly groan rolled from her lips. Rocking back and forth, she let out a demonic howl. A soft thud fell into the grass, and a baby's cries drifted up upon the breeze into the house. The cleaners began their retreat into the woods. Standing, Marlowe followed suit, Owen on her heels. Peeking behind the demolished walls, Leilani ran out into the fields. Dropping to her knees, she looked at the baby, wiping away the blood, and stared into the child's golden eyes. The baby smiled and cooed, reaching her tiny fist out to grab Leilani's fingers. We're going to be okay. Sobbing, she scooped the baby up and ran back into the house. Look, it's Marlowe's baby. She's okay. Kissing the baby all over her head, she cuddled her to her bosom. I think we're going to be okay. The goddess has forgiven us. Knees buckling, she dropped to the floor. My sweet child, I am going to call you Oriana. You are our second chance, our promise. So, sometimes the people who are meant to help you hear God's voice are actually the ones deepening your damnation. Until next time, happy hauntings.